Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. I hope the content encourages you and helps you build your faith. Now enjoy the message.
I was thinking about this the other day. I had built a box garden in my backyard, right? And it was like 4 by 8. It was 2 by 12, so it was 24 inches tall, and I needed some dirt to put inside of it. And so I called one of my buddies, and he said, man, do not go to a retail place where you buy bags of dirt. You're going to pay a fortune for it. He said, go to a supplies yard or something like that. He said, just call one. And he gave me the name of one. So I called them, and I said, hey, I need some dirt for a garden. He said, oh, yeah. He said, come on by. And I said, okay, no problem. So I showed up there, and when I got inside there, I said, hey, I need some dirt for a garden I got. And he said, well, our smallest load that we'll sell you is a yard. And I was like, okay, perfect. I'm thinking, 1 yard, right? So I was like, oh, great. No problem. Give me a yard. And he was like, well, what are you driving? And I was like, Dodge Ram. What are you doubting, pal? I ain't driving no Ford. I was like, I'm in a Dodge. And he was like, oh, yeah, that's truck of the year. No, I'm just kidding. But he's like, yeah, no, that'll work. That'll do it. And so he has me pull around. And so I pull around, and I'm sitting there, and I'm on my phone, and I'm not paying attention. And then all of a sudden, I feel this, like, kaboom in the back of my truck. And I mean, my whole truck is shaking. And I look back, and there's this guy with this tractor with this bucket, and he had just dumped an entire bucket of dirt. I mean, filled the bed to overflowing. And I was like, this has to be wrong, And so the guy's pulling around, and he comes back with a second bucket, and I'm like, no, what are you doing? He said, oh, 1 bucket's half a cubic yard. And I was like, there ain't no way, man. I played football. I know what a yard looks like, And he's like, no, you got it all wrong. Sure enough, he starts to drop it in there, and I'm like, stop. And he said, minimum's a yard. I said, I'll pay double to only have half, Like, stop with all of this right now. If you don't know what a cubic yard looks like, you're in here like, what am I missing right now? So I don't know how to explain it other than it is a truckload of dirt. Like, a cubic yard is a ton of dirt. So I got this truck bed full of dirt, and I mean, I'm riding on 2 wheels at this point. I'm like, what do you want me to do with all this, guy? And so I asked him, I was like, well, what am I supposed to do? He was like, well, whatever you had in mind. And I was like, so I drive back to my house, and I back my truck up, and after 3 wheelbarrows full, my garden was full. Three wheelbarrows. I didn't even make a dent. Like, you could not even tell I had taken dirt. It was up to the top of my truck cab, like piled all the way up there. So then I'm like, what am I going to do with all this dirt? So I start calling my neighbors. I'm like, hey man, you need any dirt? And they're like, well, what do you got? And I was like, a yard, like a truckload of this stuff I don't know what I'm going to do with. And so after giving away, a couple shovels here, a couple shovels there, I had to get this out of my truck. So I identified an area in my neighborhood that needed a little more soil, if you know what I mean, right? And so it was close to the retention pond. It was a low area, and I just thought I'd do the homeowners association a favor and give them some free dirt. So I backed my truck up there, and I remember I spent like 3 hours shoveling dirt out of my truck and throwing it on the ground for I'm like, I am wasting so much time, and my hands were hurting. You know how it starts in your lower back, and then it creeps up to your shoulders, and then it gets in your leg, and then everything's just burning, and I am literally dumping dirt, carrying heavy loads for no reason at all. When I think of the way we go through life sometimes, when I think of the way some of us approach our work, when I think of the way some of us approach just life in general and this no days off mentality, and I've got to continue to work, and even on my days off, I got stuff I got to do and everything else, I see us carrying a lot of heavy loads that we have no business carrying. And here's what I think the problem is. We don't know what God said about rest. We don't understand what he said about rest. We don't know how big a cubic yard is. We don't know what God has called us to in a place of rest, so we just continue to heap on the heavy burdens, heap on the weariness, heap on the anxiety, heap on the stress, and then we go through our entire life moving these heavy burdens around when God is just saying to us, if you would listen to me. Well, let me just read to you what he says. How about that? Matthew 11:25 through 30. It says, at this time, Jesus prayed this prayer. O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things for those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike. That's really important. We'll come back to it, but he's basically saying, thank you for not revealing your truth of rest to those who think they've got it figured out on their own. Yes, Father, it pleases you to do it this way. Verse 27, my Father has entrusted everything to me. No one truly knows the Son except the Father, and no one truly knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. 27 is a continuation of 25, talking about revealing those to the childlike. 28. Then Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. Come to me, all you that fill your truck up, that fill your car up, that fill your life up, that fill your backpack up, that fill your days off up, that fill your calendar up, that fill your schedule up, that fill your life up with all of this stuff to do and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. The more I talk to people about rest, the more I talk about this subject from last week to this week, I am recognizing we are a people that need rest in our soul. We are a people that we need something to calm the anxiety, the stress, and the pressure that is building up in our soul, forcing us to think we have to do more to cope with it. Verse 30, for my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. There was a report submitted to the Japanese government about a man. His name was Mr. A. They named him Mr. A to protect his identity. They, in the report, summarized what Mr. A's work week looked like. He was working at a food processing plant for multiple years in Japan, and he was working 110 hours a week. Let me give you the math on that. That is 7 days straight of 16-hour work days. That is sleeping 8 hours and working 16 nonstop. He did this for several years until he was found dead at his workstation. He had died of a heart attack, and he was 34 years old. The Japanese government didn't know what to call this epidemic that was spreading throughout Japan. It was happening everywhere, all the time, over and over. They had businessmen dropping dead on the doorsteps of their work. They had people falling out dead in their offices. So they came up with a word in their language because they literally did not even know what to call it. They defined it as karoshi. Do we have it, guys? Did I give you? Karoshi. It means death by overwork. It is summarized with 3 different things. It says it is working an insane amount of hours under intense pressure with little to no rest. Karoshi is literally killing yourself by working too much. The New York Times just did a story called Karoshi America. And they said if they go back to the beginning of karoshi in Japan and they go back to the things that were happening, the pressures at work, the pressure to perform, the challenges and things heaped on people's lives, they went back to what started karoshi in Japan and they said America is moving in the exact same direction as Japan with karoshi. Karoshi America, death by overwork. We've got to get this rest right. I had a pastor I was listening to the other day, and it was really fascinating. He said, if you look at Scripture and you look at the Ten Commandments, God put, you must honor the Sabbath, you must not kill, you should not commit adultery. And so he said there was a man who approached him and said, hey, I want to get together on Monday. I know Monday is your day off, but would you still be willing to connect for lunch? And he looked at this young man and he said, yeah, sure, let's do it. And he said, then after that, I'll just go cheat on my wife. And then after I cheat on my wife, I'll go and find somebody to kill and I'll murder somebody. He said, because God was as serious about taking a Sabbath as he was about adultery and murder. Yet when we think about that in terms of the way our society puts pressure on working and no regard for rest, rest is for the weak, rest is for the weary. No, rest is for us so we can operate the way God has called us to operate. And if we don't understand this, we're going to kill ourselves by overworking. We're going to wear ourselves to death. Let me give you a recap from last week, and then we'll dive into this week. Last week, we did a timeline of rest throughout Scripture. The first thing that you see in creation is God instituted rest. God put rest into creation, and on the seventh day, he created man on the sixth, and on the seventh day, he created rest. Man's first day at work was rest. He created rest, and he called rest holy. God regulated rest through the Sabbath. Okay? He recognized that people weren't understanding rest, so he regulated rest by saying, you will honor the Sabbath in the Ten Commandments. The Jews corrupted that rest and they made it work. Isn't that amazing? We talked about that last week, how we can even take our days off and make them days of work. We can take a day of rest and turn it into a day of work. So the Jews corrupted it, they turned it into a day of work. Jesus fulfilled that rest in salvation. Talked about that, Hebrews 4, last week. So Jesus comes, Jesus fulfills that rest through salvation, and now we're living in that rest through sanctification, through growing to be more like him, through looking more like him, through living more like him. And that focus of the rest, God has called us to rest and to rest in him. There are two reflections that we see anywhere that rest is mentioned. The reflection, number one, is God's goodness in creation. We need to stop for a moment and rest in God's goodness in our lives. We need to stop and rest in what he has blessed us with, what he has created, the beautiful world that he has made, our family, our children, our spouse, our life, everything that God has done for us. We need to rest in reflection of his creation, and we rest in God's power in salvation. So we spend our time saying, God, you are powerful, you are mighty, you are holy, you've transformed me, and you are working powerfully in my life. That's from last week. And if you look through the biblical layout of rest, you have a continual rest in Jesus, you have a daily rest in devotion, and you have a weekly rest in Sabbath. Those are the three rests that we model. A student messaged me and said, hey, clarify for me the daily rest in devotion and the weekly rest in Sabbath. And I said, the daily rest in devotion prepares you for your day of work, your day of doing things. Your weekly rest in Sabbath is a day of rest not doing those things. Get the difference, right? Sabbath, you're told not to work. You'd get stoned to death under Jewish law if you were working on the Sabbath. You were told not to work. Do not work. Don't perform work. A daily rest and devotion prepares me for my day. It prepares me for my work. A weekly rest in Sabbath is a day I do not work. I'm not checking email. I'm not responding to email. I'm not all over my text messages. I'm not doing things that I would be doing. I'm not preparing a sermon. That's a challenge for me. I'm not doing these things on my day off because God has called me to find rest in my soul, whatever that may be for you. All right, let's dive in. Matthew 11, 25 through 27. It says, at that time, Jesus prayed this prayer, O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike. Yes, Father, it pleases you to do it this way. Verse 25 said he reveals them to the childlike, those that are willing to trust him, those that are willing to give unto him, those that are willing to say, Lord, I've got so much to do that I can't stay on top of it, but I still trust you with it, and I'm willing to do what you want me to do. Verse 27, like I said, it's a continuation of verse 25. My Father has entrusted everything to me. catch this, what Jesus is framing for you. No one truly knows the Son except the Father, and no one truly knows the Father except the Son. So he's saying everything is entrusted into the Father, and everything that the Father has entrusted is entrusted into the Son, and everything that has been entrusted into the Son is to those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Who does he reveal them to? The childlike, those that are willing to trust him, those that are willing to follow him. John 1:18 is a great companion verse. It says, no one has ever seen God, but the unique one who is himself God is near to the Father's heart. He has revealed God to us. The overarching message, before we're going to spend time in the real nuts and bolts of the passage, is this. If you think you have it figured out, and you know what you need, and you know what you don't need, and you're not willing to listen to what God is trying to speak to you about rest, you're going to get what you're creating. If you will be childlike and trust the Lord, and follow his plan for you, and honor what he has asked you to do through rest, God is going to reveal rest to you. He's going to reveal peace to you. He's going to relieve anxiety. He's going to relieve stress. He is going to lighten the burdens. In fact, we'll start Matthew 11:28. Says, then Jesus said, first step. Let's start here. How do we get to this place of rest? How do I experience this rest? I'm overwhelmed. I'm overworked. I have way too many things to do. 7 days a week is not enough. 24 hours in a day is not enough. What do I do to experience rest? Here it is. Matthew 11:28. Then Jesus said, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. The very first thing he says is, come to me. You have to be willing to go to him with your stress and your anxiety and not trying to solve it all on your own by working more. You have to be willing to go to him, to come to him and say, Lord, I'm overwhelmed. Lord, I'm stressed. Lord, I'm worn out. Lord, I don't know what to do, but like you said earlier, I am going to trust you 100% with this. Those two words, weary and heavy burdens. Weary is overwork from labor. Read the Greek definition of it is weary from labor. Those of you that are working too much, come to the Lord and he will give you rest. Those of you that carry heavy burdens, that is pressure, that is stress, that is anxiety, that is hurt, that is worry, that is fear. He's saying if you're working too much or you're carrying pressure and stress, your resolution for it is what? Come to me. Turn to me. Come back to me. What is our natural inclination? I know what it is for me. I've got to do something, right? I've got to do something. I've got to do something more. I've got to add more time to my schedule. We need to hire somebody else, or we need to do. I've got to do. And you get in this vicious cycle of trying to do what God has asked you to let go of and come to him to experience. I had a golden retriever one time. Golden Retriever fans, where are you at? Come on, people. Where are you? It's the weakest Golden Retriever crowd I've ever heard in my life. It's the greatest dog on the face of the planet. We'll include Golden Doodles and Labradoodles and every goofy other mixed breed there is out there. But I'm telling you, I had the best dog on the face of the planet. Her name was Johnny. I got her at 6 weeks old. I raised that dog like my own. I love that puppy. I mean, the most obedient dog on the face of the planet. Literally babysat and raised my child. I don't even know what I was doing half the time. She just would follow Zion around. She would sit underneath her in the swing. When Zion started coughing or fussing, she'd start barking. She was my baby. She was the most obedient. I could walk her off leash, 3-mile loop around our neighborhood, no problem. There was one thing that made Johnny go nuts. One thing. I'm talking the greatest. I would look at Johnny and I would say, kennel. And she would walk to her kennel and she would sit in her kennel with the gate open, looking at me. I'm the greatest dog on the face of the planet, right? My kids could learn a few things from Johnny. So, go to your room for bed. No! Johnny would. So, at Johnny, the one thing that turned Johnny loose was squirrels. It's like she lost her mind. It's like all of a sudden this great, beautiful, wonderful puppy that I had raised turns into this Tasmanian wolf that is like uncontrollable. I was at this park one time, and it was like a beautiful day, a Saturday at a park, and the park was gorgeous, right? So there's people everywhere. There's kids playing. There's a birthday party under the pavilion. There's a big soccer game that's going on the field, and I'm walking Johnny off leash, and I'm just like, soaking up, resting in the beauty of God's creation, right? So I'm walking through, and I'm like, my goodness, this is gorgeous. This is wonderful. And then all of a sudden, and if you've seen this, you know what I'm talking about, Johnny goes into like this midpoint. She's like, and I was like, oh, no. I was like, Johnny, come here. Johnny, come here now. And she's looking at me. And you know how these dogs, they contemplate the repercussions, right? She's contemplating the consequences. I can see her doing it, yet she's inching towards this squirrel. And what is it with squirrels? Like the most mocking animal of dogs. Like, and it's like sitting there, just tempting my dog, right? And so all of a sudden, I'm like slowly, because I know if I run after Johnny, the squirrel's going to run and Johnny's going to be gone. And so I'm like, Johnny, come here. Johnny, no. And Johnny's. And then all of a sudden, squirrel takes off and Johnny is gone. Runs through the soccer field, it's like a movie, runs through the middle of this, running in circles, a squirrel spinning, Johnny spinning, tears up the soccer field, runs through the pavilion, runs up the side post of the pavilion. So Johnny is sitting there and all the parents are like, oh, this crazy dog, like what parents do when a dog shows up. I'm like, no, she's a great dog, right? And they're like, you can't even control her, And so she's running up and then the squirrel runs down the other side and she is chasing this thing and I'm running. And every time the squirrel would get up into the tree, Johnny would sit there and she would look around the tree and I would start inching closer. Is there anything worse than trying to catch a dog? Who's lost their dog in a neighborhood? It's horrible. You can't catch them. You just bribe them and threaten them the whole time. I've got snacks. I'm going to kill you. Come here now, right now. No. And you're talking all nice, but you're thinking all bad in your mind, right? You're talking, oh, come here, you're such a good dog. I'm going to lock you in your kennel for 36 hours, You got all these plans, but you finally, every time I would get close, oh, Johnny, come here, you're such a good baby. Oh, let me scratch your belly. And finally, I caught her, but it was just this game of cat and mouse chasing Johnny around, and it's almost the way we avoid rest. It's the way we avoid rest. We get caught on some task. We get caught on some to-do. We get caught in some stress. We get caught in some pressure. And the Lord is saying, come to me. You don't know how to handle it? Come to me. You're overwhelmed? Come to me. You're working too much and worn out? Come to me. And we're chasing squirrels. We're just rabbit trail, task after to-do after to-do. And the Lord is saying, I want your heavy burden. I want your weary. I want your worn out. I want your stress. I want your pressure. But you have to come to me. How do we start? Where do we begin with rest? We've got to go to the Lord. We have to go to the Lord. And this sounds elementary, right? Like, of course. Yeah, we're stressed. We need to turn to the Lord. Let me ask you something. When was the last time stress, pressure, or anxiety hit you and you said, I am pausing from all of this. I am stopping all of this right now. And Lord, I am going to take the next 5 minutes. I'm going to rest in you. I'm going to trust in you. I'm going to do a self-inventory of, am I overwhelmed? Am I working too much? Am I still getting my rest? Am I still following you? And Lord, I'm not going to allow this pressure, this stress, this anxiety, these heavy burdens, or this weariness to overtake me. I'm going to come to you. I know I don't, as much as I should. I know I don't as much as I need to. Instant thought is, okay, I got to do something. I got to fix something. And the Lord's saying, come to me. Just come to me and experience rest. Number 2, Matthew 11:29. He says, take my yoke upon you. You're going to see yoke twice, and you're going to see two different kinds of rest. I love this about this passage. Take my yoke upon you, let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. This use of yoke right here is they used to take oxen, right? And they would use oxen to plow fields, and they had a double yoke. They had two yokes on this oxen yoke. And what they would do is they would pair a rookie yoke, or they would pair a rookie oxen in the yoke with a veteran oxen. And what would happen was that veteran oxen would teach that rookie oxen how to work, how to plow fields, how to do different things, right? So when he uses this analogy, he says, take my yoke upon you and let me teach you. They were intimately familiar with this model. They were thinking to themselves, take someone who doesn't know about rest and link them to someone who knows how to rest, and let them learn how to maneuver. Let them learn how to work. Let them learn what to do. In other words, God wants you to link up with him to learn how to rest. Catch that. Take my yoke upon you and let me teach you. We come to him and then we let him teach us. Lord, we are going to let you. Now, look at the different rests, right? Go back to 28 real quick. You guys got Matthew 11:28? Throw it up there. We got it. You guys are so good. It says, then Jesus said, come to me, right? When we come to the Lord and we have weariness and we have heavy burdens, and I will, what does he do? Give us rest, right? So the Lord gives us rest when we're weary. He gives us rest when we have heavy burdens. Now go to 29. Now take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle in spirit, and you will what? Find rest. You're broken, you're worn out, you are overwhelmed, the Lord will give you rest. But then if you're going to live in rest, you've got to learn from the Lord how to walk in rest, and then you will find it. Looks like this. I'm broken, I'm worn out, I'm stressed, I'm having a nervous breakdown. Lord, I need you. He gives me rest. And then we go back to the same things that led us to a stressed out, nervous breakdown. And he's saying, I gave you rest, but you didn't learn how to continue to find it. I gave you rest because you came to me, but then you didn't link up with me and learn how to rest so that I can continue to teach you how you will find rest. You need to learn how to find rest by linking up with the Lord and allowing him and his word to teach you how to continually find what you continually need to sustain yourself for the long haul. Do they still have driver's ed? Anybody? Do they have driver's ed? It's probably online now, right? Like everything. I went to like real driver's ed, right? Our basketball coach taught driver's ed in the summer for 3 hours in the car that said student driver on it, right? Is that a Target or what? I mean, they got after me so bad. I feel like I had this pay it forward with student drivers. Whenever we're driving, I'm like, ooh, Anna, it says student driver. Like, let's run them off the road. You know, let's teach them the skills they need to be, you know, have good maneuvers. Because when I was a student driver and I was in a small town, here's what happened. My coach taught driver's ed. We watched these videos from the 50s, and then after the videos, we would fill out this test, and then we'd have driving time where we had to go drive for 2 hours, and there was 3 of us in the car. There was somebody driving, there were 2 people in the back, and there was coach who was sitting in the passenger seat, and we had this giant student driver sign, and everybody jacked with us on the road. We went slow. You had to go the speed limit, right? So we're going the speed limit. They're zipping around us. And we had friends who knew that we were in the car, so they're pulling in and they're slamming on their brakes. And we had people who'd like roll stop signs right next to us. And they messed with us constantly. But Coach had something in his passenger seat. I don't know if your driver's ed car had this, but our coach, he had a brake. Yeah, right? Who else remembers these driver's ed moments? Coach had a brake. And so I'd be driving, I'm like nervous, and they're speeding up, and they're waving, and they're making fun, and they're holding signs up, and then they swerve over and cut us off, and I'm trying to figure out which is the gas and which is the brake, and then all of a sudden you would feel this, you know, and you look over, and Coach was using his brake because Coach was linked up to us in the car. And Coach knew when to stop. Coach was a veteran at this. He'd been teaching driver's ed for 25 years. He knew all of these things. That's what happens to us when we link up with the Lord for rest. When we're trying to find rest on our own, we are driving a car and we don't know where the brake is. But when we link up with the Lord and we say, Lord, I'm going to do this your way. I'm going to rest your way. The Lord is the one who says, okay, stop here. I've told you to stop here. I've told you to slow down here. I've told you to quit doing this. I want you to pause. And if we're linked up to him, we're going to do what he says. But if we're, remember verse 25, wise in our own eyes, and we've got it all figured out, and we know exactly what we need, we're not going to experience the rest that he has for us. You say, so what do I need to learn from the Lord? I'm ready to link up to him. What do I need to learn? Let me give you one verse that tells you everything you need to know. If you walk away with anything today, write this down, put it in your phone, take it somewhere, memorize this. This is what we need to know about rest. Mark 2, verse 27. Y'all got it? It says, then Jesus said to them, listen to this. The Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people, and not people to meet the requirements of the Sabbath. Rest is a gift to you for you. God did not make the Sabbath so that you could rest unto him. God made the Sabbath so that you can live and breathe and experience life and rest and begin to move. He says it right here, the Sabbath was made to meet the needs of people and not people to meet the requirements of Sabbath. God didn't create the Sabbath so you could honor him. God created the Sabbath so you could honor you and you could take care of you. You want to go a little step further? Want to dig a little? Are we just chewed up right now? I feel a little bit of conviction in the room. You want to go a little further with this? Okay, so Exodus chapter 16. We were in Exodus chapter 16 5 so weeks ago. Children of Israel, they're complaining in the wilderness about not having food. And God says to them, okay, I will give you food, and for 6 days I will give you food, and on the 6th day I'll allow you to keep double because I won't give it to you on the 7th day. So the 7th day rolls around, and what did the children of Israel do? They went looking for food anyway. And what did they find? Nothing. And what was the message? If you're going to try to work when God wants you to rest, you're not going to find him. If you're going to try to work when God's asked you to rest, you're not going to find his blessing. You're not going to find his favor. You're not going to find manna. You're not going to find peace. You're not going to find joy. It's the same principle with tithing as it is with rest. 6 days with God's rest will be more productive than 7 without. 90% with God's blessing will be far more producing than 100% without. It's the same principle, trusting God with it. Trusting the Lord, saying, Lord, I come to you and I let you teach me and I will put you first here. And I will rest when you've called me to rest. And I will work when you've called me to work. And I will do things your way. And what does he promise? Your weariness from overwork. Your weariness and heavy burdens will become places of rest. All right, let's wrap this up. Matthew 11, verse 30. Here's the result. Come to me. Let me teach you how to rest. You come to me, I'll give you rest. You let me teach you, you'll continually find rest. And then Matthew 11, verse 30. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. It's not illumination. That is as it meets weight. It's talking about the burden I'll give you will weigh far less than anything you're carrying now. For my yoke is easy to bear. Remember I told you, you're going to see 2 yokes, you're going to see 2 rests. The first yoke that we were talking about is linking up to a veteran ox and to let them teach you. But there was also a second use for yoke. The secondary use for yoke is when they took the yokes off the oxen, they put them on indentured slaves, or they put them on foreign captives, and they made them carry around these heavy yokes that wore them down, that beat up their bodies, and they had to carry them until there was time to do work. So the Lord is saying, if you link up to my yoke, I'm going to teach you, and then if you carry my yoke, you continue to do what I ask you. What does he say about it? My yoke is easy to bear. It's not the yoke you're used to seeing. It's not the heart. In other words, if you're in here saying, I want to do it God's way, I want to come to him, and I want him to teach me, but my life is just not in a place right now where I can take a rest and I can rest. He is saying, if you think what I'm teaching you is hard, I make it easy. I make it simple. Just take the rest, and I will make your burdens light. I remember my first trip to the airport. I'll tell you, I don't remember it because I don't remember where I was going, but I remember I didn't have a bag, and I packed everything that I owned in a duffel bag. I'm walking through the airport, and that's just miserable, right? To have it all in a duffel bag, I have to carry it around everywhere. So I'm walking through the airport, and as I'm seeing people, and they have something that I don't. I remember telling myself, one day, I'm going to have one of these, right? I was just a kid, had nothing but a duffel bag, didn't know how to pack, stuffed it on, and I was carrying it around, and I was looking around, and I saw old Slick wheeling his bag around, like, just had it all figured out. And I remember saying to myself, someday, when I'm a big shot, someday, when I'm this businessman, someday when I got it all figured out, I'm going to have me a bag with wheels. And I'm not going to have a bag with two wheels that you got to tip over. I'm going to have one of these bags that you can do this whole thing. You can say, oh, you wanted that? Go ahead, buddy. I got it figured out, I'll pay good money for this thing. But I remember looking at it, and then I remember when I first got one, right? It was so cool. I bought my first piece of luggage, and I was like, yeah, now I'm ready. I never traveled anywhere, but I bought a piece of luggage. I was at like Marshall's, and I was like, I remember that day. I was wishing I'd have the real deal bag, and that looks like a real deal bag. So I'm buying that real deal bag for myself. And now I've taken it on several trips with me, and what's amazing is the same amount of stuff you can put in a duffel bag, you can put in this. The difference is what is underneath the load makes it light to operate. You keep trying to carry around all your stress, all your anxiety, all your worries, all your weariness, everything, the pressure from work, the pressure to perform. You keep trying to pull that around and figure it out your own way, and you've got to do more than what you're asked to, and you're not willing yet to step into rest like God has asked you to. You're going to be carrying the same amount. The problem is you're not going to be able to maneuver it. Karoshi, death by overwork. But when you come to the Lord, you find rest. He gives you rest. And then when you're willing to learn His ways and walk in that rest, you will continue to find rest. And then when you're living like that, you may have the same job, you may have the same pressure, you may have the same burdens, but there is something underneath the load that you are carrying that makes it light, that makes it easy to maneuver, that makes it easy to carry, so you can go through life rested. You can go through life fresh, and you can make it the long haul because you are resting God's way. He lightens the load.
Everybody, thanks again for joining us. We believe God has something great for your life, and we hope this message encouraged you to take the next step in your faith. Have a great week.